that would be a distorted form of the trigonal bipyramidal, and it will be
Mm.
T-shaped. But
Mm.
how to explain the T-shape?
Okay, no problem. Anyway, as you
We
said is
neglect the
correct.
loan, right?
Sorry?
We neglect the loan pair, right?
Yeah. Lone pairs only. That means again you have to start from the chlorine atom. That is the central atom. Chlorine atom is having 7 electron pairs. Okay. So chlorine over here has got 7 electron pair. Out of the 7, it is making 3 bonds with fluorine atom. Okay. See, this is how you will be showing or you will be explaining in your answer. Okay. So out of the 7 electrons of valence electron of chlorine, 3 are used for making bonds with fluorine atom. So what happened? How many bond pairs and lone pairs?
Ma'am, 3 bond pairs and 2 lone pairs.
3 bond pairs and lone pairs. So 3 plus 2, that is equal to total 5. If it was 5, then the expected geometry is trigonal bipyramidal. So that is what you can see. If you have 5 electron pair, the expected geometry is trigonal bipyramidal, or you can say it is geometry is trigonal bipyramidal. But trigonal bipyramidal means you have central atom. You have central atom, and there will be a triangular plane, that is the 3 atoms in one plane. The next 2 atoms are in above and below the plane. It's just like a triangle with the 3 elements in one plane, and the 2 other elements are pointing above and below the plane. Okay. So now the problem is that out of the 5, only 3 are bond pairs, but the other 2 are lone pairs. So, as I said, lone pairs cannot be shown with the line because lines are shown only for bonding. So, you have to remove 2 lines. But the question is like, which 2 lines you will remove? Will you remove the lines above and below the plane so that the shape of the molecule will become a triangle? If you remove above and below 2 lines, then the shape of the molecule will be triangle. But as you can see, the actual in reality, the shape is T shape. So my question is how you come to the T shape? Why don't you remove the 2 lines above and below the plane?
Because the lone pair does not repel the 120 bond, 120-degree bond, then 90 degree.
Very good. That means in such cases where you will be confusing whether I have to remove this line of bonding or that line of bonding for the lone pair, then think about the repulsion order. We know that lone pair repulsions are more stronger. So lone pairs should be given the priority first for their orientation. So you know that in trigonal bipyramidal, you have 122-degree angles are 120-degree and 90-degree. the three things the three things which is there on the plane. Okay, these 3 things are having 120-degree as angle. The one which is above and the other one below has got 90-degree. So out of 120 and 90, 120 is a greater value. So lone pairs will be orienting in the plane so that the shape of the molecule. So if you remove the 2 lines over here in a trigonal planar, if you remove the 2 lines, what is the shape now? It is like a T, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Because it's just like a T written in this way. It's like a T. It is like a T like this. Centrally, your chlorine atom will be over here and you have fluorine. You have fluorine and your fluorine. But actually, it is reality. It's a distorted structure of a trigonal bipyramidal. And if you want to show the lone pairs, you can show the lone pair over here, like this in the two lobes. Or you can simply put 2 dots for a pair. So you have 4 dots can be put on chlorine atom, showing that it is just got a 2 electron pairs, which is free. That is lone pair. Am I clear?
Yes, ma'am.
See, this is what you need to explain CLF3 if example is given, like in the exam, if they ask you to find the geometry or explain the geometry and hence the shape of a molecule, first you need to come to the geometry, which is the geometry that is trigonal bipyramidal, the expected one. From the trigonal bipyramidal, how you're coming to the conclusion that it has got a T shape. So that step you need to explain. The two lone pairs will be occupying with 120 angle, like that is because it has got maximum repulsion. The repulsion is between the lone pairs or lone pairs and bond pair is more than the repulsion between two bond pairs. So that is why lone pairs are given priority, and they will be orienting in such a way so that the final shape of the molecule will become T shape. I hope it's clear to all.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, if you have any doubt, you can clear it now before we proceed. So that silence, I'll take it as a green flag. Okay, the next example, which the homework was XCF2. Yes, Abel, can you explain how you come to the geometry and shape of
Ma'am?
XCF2 molecule?
Yes, ma'am.
Ma'am?
Yeah.
Ma'am, in the previous slide, the T-shaped geometry, what was the example given? Okay, CLF3.
CLF3, yeah. Yes, Abel, you can continue.
Okay, ma'am. So for HCF2, the HC atomic number is 56. So in the valence shell, it will be 8 electrons will be there. So while drawing the structure, 8 valence electrons will draw, and 2 if we if other. So that means bond pairs will be 2 and lone pairs will be 3. And the structure will be like HC in the middle, and F we can arrange both on left and right, and top one pair of lone pair, and bottom on 2 places also 1 and 2 lone pairs we can draw. And structure I'm not sure. I think it will be linear shape, I think, right?
Yeah, I think it's already up in the screen.
Oh, okay. I didn't see that. Okay.
Lone pairs will be on all the triangular planar position because that is 120 degree. As I said, you have two bond angles, 120 and 90. That is the trigonal bipyramidal. And from trigonal bipyramid, the 120 angle, that place will be taken by the lone pair because for them, it should be maximum distance. Because of that reason, the fluorine molecules will be orienting above and below the plane with 190 degree, and it will look like a linear shape.
Okay.
Okay, so that is the only thing whenever you're discussing about the distorted structures of from the actual or the expected geometry, you are deviating from that because of lone pair, and always keep lone pair the priority in such a way that they will have a maximum distance so that their repulsion can be reduced. So after orienting lone pair only, you will look into the bond pairs, especially in trigonal bipyramidal, because that is the only case where you got two different bond angles. In all the other examples, all the bond angles in a geometry were same. So you don't have to worry about which lines to be removed for lone pairs. But only in trigonal bipyramidal, you have two different bond angles in the same geometry. In a trigonal plane, that is 120, and above and below the plane it is 90. Actually, we used to specify them as axial and equatorial position. Okay, so you can even specify in that way.
Ma'am?
Yeah.
Ma'am, which one is axial and equatorial?
On the axis, axial position mean your x, y, and z plane, right? That is the axis of if you coordinate three coordinate system, right? X, Y, Z planes. So this is the axial position because that is the only thing going through the plane axis of.
Yes, ma'am, got it.
The other three can be called as equatorial position.
Okay, ma'am.
So that two were the example. Now we have only one last set where the total number of electron pairs were 6. So in the other examples from Thursday's class, we started discussing with total number of electron pair as 5. Okay. Then we discussed the normal geometry like with the 4 bond pairs is equal to 5. Then we got SF4, which has got 4 bond pairs and 1 lone pair. Then we homework was CLF3, which has got 3 bond pairs and 2 lone pairs. Again, everything was 5. And the last example was 2 and 3 were 2 bond pairs and 3 lone pairs. Again, so it was coming under trigonal bipyramidal geometry. So the last set for us is octahedral, that is with total number of electron pairs are 6. And SF6 molecules were already explained. When you have all the electron pairs coming as bond pairs, there is no lone pair, then in such cases, the expected geometry is octahedral arrangement. As you can see in the diagram, this is the octahedral arrangement. Now, in this case also, there will be combination of bond pairs and lone pairs. So we need to explain the deviation of the geometry. So let's start with first example. As you can see here, CLFI, BRFI. That is what I said. It is very difficult to by heart from the formula what is the geometry. Because CLF3 was we discussed as a T shape, but CLFI is coming over here. So rather than by hearting, if you follow the step which we are discussing with each and every example, that is the only reason why all the minute things we are discussing again and again so that you don't have to by heart the theory or how to apply it. The only thing is that if you know the procedure, if you know the steps to follow, then you should be very relaxing and you should be able to get the result or you should be able to predict the shape of the molecule. Okay, so CLFI, BRFI. So can you just people just try how you're getting it? And let me know like if you're able to solve. You can take any example, either CLFI or BRFI.
Ma'am, can we write it down and put a picture in the chat box?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you show the previous slide? I'll take a screenshot.
Hmm?
Can you show the previous slide? I'll take a screenshot.
Don't look into the screen and try to do it. That
Ma'am,
will
no,
actually.
the one before this, ma'am.
Okay. This one?
Yes, ma'am. I'm done.
Only only the first table, no, that we discuss here before we start. This is the basic thing. If you know this with the number of bond pairs, what is the shape, or you can say the geometry, then from that idea, you can predict the geometry or the shape of any molecule. If you know the basic thing. Okay, 3 means it is trigonal planar, 4 means tetrahedral, 5 means trigonal bipyramidal, 6 mean octahedral. Like that, if you know, then it will be easy.
Ma'am,
Yes.
ma'am, in octahedral, the shape of the plane is a rectangle.
Yeah, rectangle.
All right, ma'am.
But the bond angle is 90, you know, right? Rectangular bond angle. So all the bond angles are same. Even unlike a trigonal bipyramidal, here it's like a rectangle. Okay. And one line above and below. In trigonal bipyramidal, the previous example, it was a triangle, one above and one below. But the problem is that in a rectangle shape, the bond angle which is making here is 90. So all the bond angle will become 90 in octahedral case, unlike the previous example. So that means all bonds are identical. That's what you can say. All the bonds are identical. So if you remove the position of lone pair from one to the next, it won't make much difference. But you can again apply some other basic, what you can say, justification in placing the bond lone pair.
All right, ma'am.
Okay.
Ma'am, only for BR F5, right?
Yeah, only one example. Those are finished. You can continue with the next example, but we will discuss. Okay, let me see. Okay, yes, Nabil, I can see what you have put up already in chats. Yeah, so but here you are not showing as a shape, right? You're just showing the number of electron pairs. Okay. If you're looking only for number of electron pairs, right? No need to show the electrons on the fluorine atom.
Okay. I'll redraw
because it will be confusing. Yeah, it will be very much confusing.
Yeah.
So then it will just show the electron pairs, lone pairs on the central atom only and write down the shape also.
Okay, all right.
I hope others also finished.
Yes, ma'am.
So here, as you can see, the central atom is making 5 bonds. So out of 7 electrons of group 7, whether you're taken ClFi or BrFi, okay, you have 7 electron, and out of 7 electron, 5 is making bonds. So 5 bond pairs, and that 2 electron or 1 electron pairs are free. They are non-bonded. So 5 plus 1 will give you 6. If it is 6, the expected geometry is octahedral arrangement. Octahedral arrangement, it will look like a square bipyramidal, like a square at the center, and you have bipyramidal arrangement. We call it as octahedral arrangement. We don't use square bipyramidal. So out of all the 6 bonds, one of them are lone pair because 5 plus 1 is the distribution, 5 bond pairs and 1 lone pair. So you have to remove one of the bonds to show its shape. So if one bond is removed and it's shown as a lone pair, or you can just show it like this in this way. So now it will look like a square pyramidal. Square pyramid means it's like this. A pyramid with a square as the base. That is why it is called as a square pyramidal shape, because one bond is no more existing. It is just a lone pair. So from an octahedral arrangement, if you remove one bond responsible, like it was as it is existing as lone pair, so the remaining will look like a square pyramidal shape. Any doubt to anybody? Like you can clear it now, because I'm not going to explain other examples in detail. I think this is the 10th or 12th, 11th example that we are discussing. From the beginning, we look into the, yeah.
Ma'am, we can keep the place the lone pair up in the equatorial position, right? Instead of
You can, because here all of them are axial. If you look into 3-dimensional space, there is no equatorial over here. This is XYZ coordinate correctly. If you can imagine 3-dimensionally. Okay, I'll just show you. See, this is, if you take this as X, Y, and above one Z. So it's actually all of them are same. They are identical. So if you remove this position, okay, or if you're showing it over here lone pair, or if you're showing here as a lone pair, which does not make any difference, because 3-dimensionally the end product will be square pyramidal. If you look into 2-dimensional plane, then you may think, okay, it's different. But 3-dimensionally, it is equivalent if you remove any one of them.
Yes, ma'am.
Because they are identical, yeah. All of them are axial only.
Ma'am.
Yeah.
Ma'am, when we explain this, we have to write that we can't represent the lone pair with a line because it's not a bond. That's how we have to explain.
Or you can say, because of presence of one lone pair, the geometry, there is a distortion in the geometry and the final shape of the molecule. Rather than explaining like line, you can't draw, just that's like a very low level. Don't explain that. That's just for the explanation part only. But when you're writing, no need to explain each and every minute details like what we discussed in the class. You can just go directly because of presence of lone pair. There is a distortion in the geometry, and the final product is like what is the shape you can say. Say example square pyramidal or whatever the final geometry or the shape you're getting that you can specify. Because that is an expected thing is that lone pairs cannot be represented by a line. Lines are meant for bonding. That is an understood thing. So you don't have to explain it again.
All right, ma'am. Ma'am, and whenever there's a lone pair that's added, the bond angle always decreases?
Usually, bond angle decreases, especially that changes you will find smaller, like very complex. The change will be very complex, especially in the molecule containing more number of bonds and lone pair. Because more and more lone pair, more distortion. So what happens is like the bond angle will be changing a lot, or that change or orientation will be very difficult for them to arrange in a plane or in a 3-dimensional arrangement. So that is why only the small examples, in the case of H2O, NH3, etc., we are basically looking for the bond angle. And these kind of examples with the 5 electron pairs or 6 electron pairs, we are not generally learning what is the exact bond angle, but you can say there will be a decrease in the bond angle. That is the concept you should be knowing. Presence of lone pair always force the bond pairs to come closer. Always they will skew bond pairs, or they will tend the like what you can force the bond pairs to come closer so that the bond angle will be decreasing from the normal geometry bond angle.
Ma'am,
But here,
when we explain the structure, should we mention anything about the bond angle for these ones?
if the question is not specifying to ask you to explain the bond angle of the final geometry or final shape, then no need to explain it.
All right, ma'am. Thank you.
Or if they ask what will happen to the bond angle, then you can explain in this way. Bond angle will reduce because of lone pairs will be pushing, or that to reduce that lone pair repulsion with the bond pair or between the two lone pairs, bond pairs will come closer. Like that, one statement is enough.
All right, ma'am.
Only like smaller example, like in the case of NH3, in the case of H2O, you have to specifically learn what is the final bond angle. Say example from 109.5, it will change to 107 in the case of NH3, and it will change to 104.5 in the case of H2O molecule. Like that, that specific ones you need to learn with the bond angle. Okay, next question is XeF4. The similar way you can write it down. The same way it will happen. So here in XeF4, I'm not, as you all said, that there is no doubt in how to proceed or how to explain or how to do the geometry and shape. We'll just continue like quickly with the other two examples as well. So here XeF4, Xe is a xenon compound. You will be thinking how a noble gas, even in the previous slide we have discussed one, xenon is already a octet, completely octet. So it's like how it will be forming a complex or how it will be forming a compound with fluorine, right? It's a very rare compound. It's a very not very abundant, or you can say very common one. It's very, very rare in extreme conditions only. Xenon, the noble gas, will be reacting with fluorine to form these kind of complex. So here 8 electrons are there in xenon. It's like a noble gas, so 8 electron in the valence shell. Out of the 8, 4 will be used for making bonds with fluorine because you have 4 fluorine atoms. So remaining 4 electron, that means 2 lone pairs. So total 4 plus 2, that will come as together as 6 electron pair. So the expected geometry is octahedral arrangement. But out of the 4, 2 should be shown as lone pair. So the final shape of the molecule will become square planar. So the final shape will become square planar. That is, it's like a square plan in a plane. Simply writing square and square planar is different. So always specify it is as a square planar because it's in a plane. Is that clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. The ones which we discuss over here, maybe in the exam you can get an entirely different example or different formula of the compound, but you have to just follow this procedure to explain the VSEPR theory or to apply VSEPR theory to predict the geometry.
So, ma'am?
Yeah.
Ma'am, this is the end of the table, right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, ma'am.
And I will upload it today. I'll try to upload it today itself. All these, because I was just waiting for the VSEPR to complete so that I can upload the notes for VSEPR. It's nothing is there. All the explanation what was like happened in the class only. Other than that, it's just like few slides of table. That's what I said in the beginning. Like when we started VSEPR, it's everything is just like a table, and the explanation and everything you have to understand. That's it. Because there is not even a word explaining, but I have something like this, which is the explanation of what we discussed, why there is a change in bond angle. and everything that I'm not explaining in the class because it has happened. We already explained many times, but this is just the explanation how you can explain this shape, distortion, and bond angle, everything, just like a sample. Okay. All the example, including water, ammonia, everything is there. And then before the summer break, I think I have already given the notes for NH3, right? That was one of the important examples. So those who are not done it, please try to get it from others and complete the notes. Okay, so that is what the valence shell electron pair repulsion theory. We have completed. I think it took her almost a week time to complete it. It's very important. That is why it's been taken and discussed in so detail with each and every example. So please go through it today and go through all the examples we discussed and get back to me like tomorrow if you have any doubt.
Yes.
Okay, I think I have to ask Derek, Danish, and Rishit. Are these people here? Derek, Danish, Rishit.
Yes, ma'am.
Where is Danish? Danish, you can hear me? You're there?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Okay, okay. So you already got your notes? What is the status? Because once you're done that, then only I can arrange an extra class to explain the first part of this chapter, which you have missed out. Just let me know your status, like you're done completing the notes.
I'm doing.
Okay, what about
Yes, ma'am. Doing. I'm still
Rishit?
completing.
So please let me know like how long it will take for you, because if it is by Thursday or something, I can keep it will better, because from next week, keeping an afternoon class will be little difficult because we'll be going to the school because it's a blended learning. Let's see like how it goes. So if you can finish it by Wednesday or something, that then if I can keep Thursday, let's see, then it will be good. Or otherwise, we'll wait till the end of this month and then it's up to you anyway, but try to complete it, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so that's what VSEPR theory. And the next topic, what we have to discuss in this chapter is.
Ma'am,
Yeah,
how much topics are left in this chapter?
it is there because see that it's not the amount, it's like all these things are very new to you, unlike that you already know the topic. So valence bond theory or MOT, molecular orbital theory, orbital overlap concept, that is like it's a new thing, and it will may take little time for you to understand. So it's going to take little long than what we think, or I think.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay, because hybridization concept, you need to imagine how the orbitals, because there are different theory. VSEPR could not explain many things. There are certain restrictions in VSEPR theory. So that is why the further it was introduced valence bond theory, then molecular orbital theory, orbital overlap concept. So that was the thing left. I think another one more week it will take. By that, I think we'll be able to finish. So I'm not starting it today, the next theory, because as I said, I have to do the Introduction of
Right.
practical session.
Yeah.
Okay. So just take a 2 minutes deep breath. Just relax. I know. Then we'll continue to move to the practical part. I think you already started in grade 9 and 10. Already, you're familiar with the lab. What are the different things happening in the lab, the safety procedures and everything, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So what are the different safety precautions you will take before you enter to the lab?
Lab coat,
Mm-hmm.
mask,
Mm-hmm.
gloves.
Mask, otherwise also now this condition,
Yeah.
it's like it's become as a permanent. Okay. Then,
Goggles,
okay. So these are for your personal safety. But in the lab, rather than we taking care of ourselves only, we have the responsibility to take care of your peers or your friends who is doing next to your place also. So in the lab, you will be assigned with a particular place permanently. Like whenever you're coming to the lab, you will be given a particular space. Okay, every time when you're coming, you will do that space. You will go to that space and do it. And you have that what you can say responsibility, not only taking care of your, but also same time you're taking care of your friend as well. So that is the basic understanding you should be have. That responsibility should be there. Like unlike bio or physics lab, chemistry lab is like always the safety is the topmost priority. Rather than you do a test and getting a result, what is more important is your safety and how you're taking care of your the person who's doing next to your desk. So that is the first thing you should understand. You can't do like normally what you do in the class. You cannot have a chit chat in the class. You cannot have a fun time in the lab like that. You should be have that responsibility. You should have that feeling that okay, I am here to do this one and I have to take, because one small mistake, a carelessness, it's like may lead to some serious issues. It may be like sometimes we can't control. Our carelessness, our mistake may lead to something different. Like I can just share an example which has happened during my masters and when I was doing it in university. Okay, one of my friend, it's not because of carelessness, something happened because of the apparatus issue, and it was like something boiling in a beaker and with some chemical. I don't want to specify the chemical, and it has fell on her hand. That is completely, that elbow part has got burned and she has been taken to the hospital and everything. But the what my sir was worried is not about the burns which has happened on the surface of the skin. She said that, like Sir said, it is like may take in a week or two that will go. But the problem is that the chemical which has entered into your body will not go that easily, or it can create so many problems than what we think. It may not come as immediately, but it will take time to show the effect. Maybe years, after many years only it may show. But for some people it will may not. It's not like 100% everyone will have an effect. But the concern is that some chemical can create some serious issue. Maybe slow by slow, but it will after many years you will start getting the negative effect of it. So that is the main thing. You have the responsibility to take care of yourself and the neighboring, whoever is standing next to you, because it's something happened, then it's not in our control. So the safety is top more priority rather than doing the practical. Safety is important. Am I clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Anyway, I don't want to get you bored. We'll just start directly. In grade 11, that is the same thing you will do in grade 12 also. In grade 12, you have one more practical. Other than that, the two major important practicals that you're doing in grade 11 can be classified as volumetric analysis. We used to call it as titration. That is coming under volumetric analysis. And the second one is qualitative analysis. Volumetric analysis is coming under quantitative analysis. So what is the difference between qualitative analysis and quantitative analysis? Qualitative and quantitative. What is the difference?
Quality and quantity.
Yeah. So what is the analysis? It's analytical chemistry. That is the basically all these kind of experiments will coming under analytical chemistry. In analytical chemistry, all the experiments, whatever the experiments, can be divided basically into two: qualitative and quantitative. So what is the major difference between qualitative and quantitative?
I think
Quality
it's
and
like
quantity.
quantitative. It's more like how many times the research is done to get like the different results, and qualitative is how deep the research is done to, ensure a certain outcome. I think.
Any other opinion?
Ma'am, in qualitative, do we find the strength of a chemical? Ma'am, in qualitative analysis, ma'am, do we find the strength of a certain chemical?
That is quantitative, right? What in
And in
qualitative?
qualitative, do you assess the properties of the chemical?
Okay. Quantitative, as you said, quantity. You are measuring the strength of something. For example, you're given a Kman of a solution, or you're given a sodium hydroxide in a beaker. So how you will know what is the concentration? Because a substance can be prepared in different concentration. It could be 1 molar, it could be 2 molar, it could be 10 molar. So how you will know the concentration basically? That means the strength of the, yeah.
Ma'am, are you explaining qualitative or quantitative?
Quantitative.
So quantitative comes under volumetric?
Yeah. Wherever you are doing or you're finding out the strength of a substrate, how much quantity is present. That is why quantitative. The quantity could be in terms of concentration, like volume, say, that is what we use volumetric mean, using volumes. That is why volumetric, you're measuring 20 ml of sodium hydroxide, you're measuring 20 ml of HCl, and you're doing the titration. So that is coming under quantitative. In quantitative, you have different methods to do, and one of the method is volumetric analysis, where You take different volumes of the solution and doing the titration. So volume is taken as one of the parameter in volumetric analysis. So this is coming under quantitative because your aim of the experiment is to find the strength of the solution, or you can say the concentration of the solution given to you. So in the exam also it will be like that. You will be given a sodium hydroxide solution, and at the end you have to find the concentration, whether it's 1 molar or 2 molar, or you will be given a more salt, or you will be given a what you can say, any solution can be given, and you have to find out the concentration. That is quantitative. Then what is qualitative? Qualitative, the second one. Qualitative analysis. See, in quantitative analysis, your aim is to find the quantity. Okay, you are analyzing air. So now not only talk about our chemistry practically, generally, quantitative mean you can find the percentage of polluting gas in an air. That is again quantitative. You're measuring the quantity. So all these kind of thing will come under quantitative analysis, and volumetric is one among them. But then what you meant by qualitative?
I'm just identifying an element.
Identifying an element, or if you just rephrase it, identifying the presence of something, right? May not be an element or a different substance presence. Example, if you are finding the presence of sulfur dioxide polluting gas in air, you don't know how much quantity, but you are detecting that there is sulfur dioxide in air. So that is quality. You don't know how much quantity, but you know that it is present in the sample given to you. So that is what qualitative analysis. You just know whether it is present or not. You don't know how much quantity. So that is why practicals are divided into qualitative and quantitative. Qualitative is the basic, this first step. That means you can just know their presence, whether it is present or no. What is the identity? Okay, you're given a sample of water, and for the water analysis, so you will be getting, okay, well, this contains sodium, it contains calcium, like that. How much quantity you have to find, like then you will do the quantitative analysis to find, okay, calcium is 2%, sodium is 10%, like that. You can get to know the detail only after doing the quantitative analysis. So just be familiar with these two terms, quantitative and qualitative analysis. You are doing one quantitative analysis, that is volumetric. That is, we used to call it as titration. One of the method of volumetric analysis, that is the titration. So that means in quantitative analysis, one method is volumetric, that is using volume, and we are doing only titration in that. So it's like there are many classifications, subdivisions and everything, but basically we are looking into the titration for our quantitative analysis. In qualitative analysis, again, it can be many things, finding the polluting substance or a polluting thing in the gas, or you can do the adulteration in the food. Okay, like that you can have many qualitative analysis, but in the lab for the exam purpose, what we'll be doing is inorganic salt analysis. Inorganic salt analysis. So this is the experiment which we are starting from next week. Inorganic salt analysis. What do you mean by a salt? What is a salt? Yes, Surya, what is salt? Surya, you can hear me?
It's an acid.
Salt is an acid.
Ma'am, salt is a
Product of acid and base.
acid and basic reaction.
Acid and base reaction. Okay, that is for one information you know about salt. Anything else? Salts.
They can be acidic and basic in nature.
It can be acidic, salts can be acidic, can be basic, or sometimes it can be neutral, right? That is based on what kind of acid they are prepared and what kind of base they prepared. Based on that, salts can be either acidic, it can be basic, or it can be neutral. Okay. Other than chemically, what is the nature of salt?
Ions.
Ions. Or you can say salts are ionic compounds, you can say, right? Because yeah, it will be made up of ions. So salts are basically ionic compound. It contains ions. So salts can have two different types of ions, that is cations and anions. So you will be given a sample in your desk, which will be almost everything. We don't use any colored substances in grade 11 or 12 practical. So everything, whatever the sample you will be doing will be white in color. So the color will not give you any hint. So if you're given a white powder and you're supposed to find out what is the compound, whether it's NaCl, whether it is potassium iodide, whether it is aluminum chloride, or it could be zinc carbonate, or it could be calcium nitrate, or it should be magnesium carbonate. So how you will find out? You cannot taste to check whether it's salt.
pH.
So what you have to do is like you will find out what is the cation present and what is the anion present. Then if you know whether your compound contains calcium and your compound contains nitrate ion, then what is the identity of your compound? It will be calcium nitrate. So basically what you're doing in salt analysis, or you can say in organic salt analysis specifically, you will find out the ions present in the given sample. There will be one cation and one anion given to you, and you will find out them and you can predict what is the identity of the sample given. So that is the only job or what you have to do in qualitative analysis during your practical session. Then again, you will have a confusion how you will do it. How can you do it? Boys, you're there, right?
Ma'am, by testing it with chemical reactions.
Yeah, so there are certain plan is there, right? You cannot simply go and take a beaker or test tube and add whatever the chemicals you want. There are systematic plan. That means if you have to do a step 1, that has this to be done before you do the step 2. So there is a plan of analysis. So you will be given that plan, and that according to that plan only you will take. Oh, you cannot start from the back to the first. The order is in such a way that you have to follow the same order. Otherwise, your answer will be wrong. And most of the Viva question in grade 12, whenever if somebody asks you, it's related to inorganic salt analysis and showing the importance of following the order of analysis. So whenever you will come to the lab, whether the next week or after some time, whenever as per your choice, you're opted, you should be able to know that at the end of the lab, when you're moving out of the lab, you should be knowing like what you have done today. What is the reason why I have to take this step, or what is the chemical reaction happened during this reaction when I mix these two chemicals. So like that, you should learn the theory along with the practical part, so that at the end you don't have to worry about any Viva question or anything related to it. Okay, so that is just a simple advice. Sometimes teachers may get time to explain what you're doing, but as it goes, You will be very busy in doing individually, and maybe in the first few weeks only we'll be assisting, like demonstrating or coming and helping you in that way. But after that, we'll be busy in doing. But if you have a habit of looking into it, what you're doing and what kind of chemical reaction has happened, then at the end it will be easy for you. Otherwise, what happened? You are just doing the practical as a practical. Okay, mixing A and B, giving you this color, but you don't know what is A and B and what kind of reaction has happened during the mixing. Like that, if you don't know anything, then at the end it is going to be very difficult for you. So that is the only advice which I want to give you. Make sure that when you're coming to the lab, you should have that attitude. Okay, I'm going to learn something new, and I want to know what is chemically happening when I'm doing this reaction, so that it will be easy. Okay, so that's it. I know it's little more theory, more talking from my side. If somebody, one of you want to talk and say something, you can.